For real.
They measure it. They'll pressure. They come and pressure your house and see where you're losing heat.
Oh, like where it's
You also one of the other things too. I did this at my Key West house because it's old as hell. You can just get a temperature gauge, like you read the tire temps. I bought one, and you just kind of shoot the threshold of your doors, all the seal jams and all that. Some of your door seals may be old, allowing a little bit of heat in or air conditioner out. And also, it's great to check pool temp if you want, relatively cheap way to do that if you got a pool and you're heating it.
Let me get this straight. You use a tire temperature gauge.
It's basically a temperature gauge. The tire temperature gauge wasn't made.
You can just see them.
But the water, though, I don't understand it. I understand it with the air, but
you shoot it right there, boom, tell you what temperature the water is.
Really?
Why wouldn't it?
I thought it would have to be like in it, like submerged.
No.
This
surface.
This week in Redneck Lifestyle, you have checking your room temperature with a tire gauge.
Let me be clear. When they made this gauge, it was not made for NASCAR and tire guys. They would never make it. They would never make it as a company if they made a tire temp strict tool. It's just a temperature gauge to measure anything, and tire guys happen to use it to measure tire temps.
But you know what they've invented since then is a thermometer.
Explain to me which thermometer you're talking about.
The one you hang on your wall, and that way you can look at it and it says, okay, this room is 70 degrees.
That doesn't help you understand if you get lost, if you got heat loss or air conditioning loss around your door jams.
True, but don't you lose
seals.
heat mostly in the ceilings?
Mike, if your door is up, then you need to know it.
Mm-hmm.
Your temperature gauge on the wall isn't going to tell you this.
That's true. Okay, so you go. I got you. So you go to the door jams.
Go to the door jam.
I got you.
And if it spikes, like if you got a seal across the bottom of the door or around the door, if it spikes in a corner or something like that, it's not sealing.
How often do you do this?
If you've never done it, you need to do it. And then once you've done it, repair the issues or fixed any problems and save your ass a little bit of on your bill, power bill, whatever. Then you're probably good for a couple years. You can just check it again later.
God, man, see, this should be an Ask Junior question.
I found our guy because we got to seal up the barn that we're renovating.
The Red Sox are trying to make it 2 in a row.
Tell him to borrow.
Hi again, everybody. I'm Dwayne Kuiper with Mike Kruko, and again, it looks like a great evening for a ball game.
But it really does, Kuiper. I'm anxious to get this one started.
Using race parts.
And now, here's tonight's starting pitcher, Adam Eaton.
All right, you're just so.
Welcome to Interleague Baseball, a game between the Boston Red Sox and the San Diego Padres.
It's just a temperature gauge that
Here's the game's first batter, Johnny Damon.
Of anything.
I'm not defensive.
So, baseboards will leak if you don't, if not installed.
I learned something.
You lose a little bit. You do have some heat loss, and HVAC is running a little harder than it has to if your baseboards aren't sealed.
Can we do this damn show, please?
That was a great open.
This was the open. You just got your next 2 weeks worth of opens right there.
Listen, we like bringing you this podcast. We know many of you are loyal listeners, and most of us in the studio, we also listen to a wide array of other podcasts. We want to tell you about a new one coming out. It's called The Boardroom Out of Office, and it's a new podcast from The Boardroom, hosted by Rich Klein. He's the co-founder of 35 Ventures alongside his business partner, Kevin Durant, NBA star. On Out of Office, sports industry vet and entrepreneur Kleiman will give you an all-access pass to some of the greatest minds in sports, business, entertainment, and technology. As guests share how their personal experiences have helped shape their careers. He will also explore the experiences, the people, and the stories of how big ideas come to life. The conversations that occur outside of the office, where the real business gets done. You can listen and subscribe to The Boardroom Out of Office on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your shows. Again, that's The Boardroom Out of Office podcast with Rich Kleiman. Subscribe today.
Exactly what you saw right there.
All right, so open segment. We have Chocolate Myers coming on later. We mentioned that. We got a great ass junior who's doing about spinning coming up too. I've posted a few more pictures of the Nova update where decals are here. today, as soon as I'm done with this podcast, I'm going to go and mess with some decals. So we're starting to decal this thing. And somebody said on the internet that I should paint the decals on, hand letter the car. And I was like, man, I don't think that they realized it wasn't hand lettered. But we wanted to clear that misconception up. I don't know how many people out there thought that the hand lettered car
I
was
was the
out.
exact same way with the Austrian car. I was like, why are they putting decals on it? And I didn't know.
Yeah. Decals were around in 1980.
Starting lineup.
It's not wraps. They just didn't wrap them. They painted the car. Decaled the paint.
Now, hand lettering, but I hand lettered my first late model stock car in 1994. So, I mean, it was still prevalent. And there's probably still a few people that hand letter their cars today, and especially the modifieds and so forth. Don't you think?
That would seem nerve-wracking.
Yeah, local tracks, there's still guys
out there
with that little wagon with paints.
Yeah.
But, we're working on the Nova. It's getting closer and closer.
Me and Carrie Dale Earnhardt were looking at that thing out of my office window yesterday. Just peering at it, just looking at it.
Yeah?
It was nice. Oh, man. And his wife Renee was with us, too. We were just looking at that. Well, Renee had a lot of questions, so Carrie was answering those. But we went through the whole story of your anxiety over getting the verification that it was in fact your dad's car. And so we started talking about the hammer marks, which is, if anybody wants to hear that, I don't know that we'll go all the way through it again right now, but we've certainly talked enough about it on this podcast. But yeah, it is Dale Earnhardt's car, and you went through a methodical process to get that confirmed. And it was pretty fascinating. So, yeah, Carrie and I were just sitting there peering at it. Man, just looking at it.
And hitters are having a field day.
Sometimes you just kind of get caught off in a just gazing at it. You know what I'm saying?
It's like you see a plate of food go by at the restaurant, and you just
but things parked out right underneath my office window. It's right there, so it's like you can't help but look at it.
Yeah.
I can't wait till it's lettered and we're rocking and rolling. I think my goal is to take it to Darlington for throwback weekend, either this year or next year. But I need to get it running, get it decaled, and get the profile of the car right. It's a little high. And take it to Charlotte Motor Speedway and just tool around the racetrack.
Really? That's kind of neat.
I know.
Well, all right, I'm going to put you on the spot. Mike, we're going to fix this car, and we're going to take it outside, crank it runs. Okay? All right, now park it in front of the field at the Xfinity race at Darlington, and now you're going to drive a pace like that.
Oh, no, I got you. I think I know what you're trying to get at. You're just saying you need to test it out around the racetrack. I got it. But
where would you go? You wouldn't take it just down to Charlotte? It's just right there. I go to work there anyways.
That'd be cool, yeah. No, I guess I just was not mentally processed all that yet.
Well, I work at Charlotte because we broadcast the races from the booth there, so maybe I'll just have it
drive it to work. Drive it to work one day.
I'll just
put some plates on it.
I'll go early and have it there and just run a couple laps just before I get through.
He's going to be late.
He's totally going to be late.
They're all going to be late.
I really?
You think Latart's just going to be able to be in his game for the broadcast?
I just need to go around a little bit and make sure nothing leaks, nothing falls off, nothing breaks, nothing rattles and falls. I mean, we don't want any problems for those guys that are trying to run a race. And that'd be embarrassing. I have to clean the track up for some mess we made. If it's leaks, I'm just going on the trailer and taking it home.
Yeah, but who would go with you? Who would you take out there?
I ain't thought about that.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's COVID.
Gotta be Robert.
We're in a world of COVID. You can't just take anybody you want to the racetrack. You can't just load up the van and drive on down there.
You're not driving.
I'm not? What?
There's no way you're driving over there.
What? Why wouldn't I? Physically drive it down there in the dually? How else am I going to get there?
Okay. If he's going to go over there to go test it out, and there is a problem with it, my question was simply who is out there that he would collaborate with to address the problem?
I don't know.
He's saying, I'm going out there by myself.
He'll be in his NBC suit, like his sport coat, and he'll be under the car, putting the diaper on.
No. I know you're kidding, but I'm saying I was curious who is his point person.
Is this at Charlotte or Darlington?
Oh, both.
Well, I imagine I'll take one of the guys from the shop that helped put the car together.
Isn't that Robert G?
Robert G kind of stood back and said, this is wrong, this is right, put that over there, do this, that, cut that off. Robert G. oversaw it and made sure that everything we were doing was period correct and exactly how they would have done it. He didn't, I don't think, physically put his hands on the car a bunch. Now, I'll take one of the guys that cares to go, that's messed with the car, as far as a driveline guy. We'll go over to Charlotte. We'll run around a little bit, make sure there's no problem. Bring it back here, nut and bolt everything. Look and see if there's any other leaks or any issues. And then, just check all the boxes so that if we go take it to Darlington and parade it around, even just for a lap on the apron in front of that Xfinity field, we can't have anything fall off.
That'd be mortifying, wouldn't it?
Well, I just don't want to bother the process, right? I don't want the process of their weekend. Xfinity guys, they got a job to do. There's more on the line. It's a playoff race, all that crazy stuff. So if I'm going to go in there and interject my thing, my car, and my moment, I don't want to ruin anything for what's really happening there. Something bigger than the Nova.
But I'm sorry, who are you kidding when you said apron? You ain't gonna be on a damn apron.
That's such a minor detail. That's such a minor detail.
You're gonna be up on that track.
I don't know. Maybe not. I ride the apron, buddy, just to get under your skin.
He's got one consistent outget
under there.
Yeah, well, but if he does, if he does that, then he runs the risk of it working great on an apron, but not on the track.
I will. When I get in there, and I'll be terrified that it doesn't start, and then when it does start, that it doesn't leak something.
Listen, that's legit, because we actually have a bit of a moment that almost happened to us, and that was when when Dale was having to drive a car out onto the football field at the Tax Slayer Bowl, and we weren't in love with this idea to begin with, because this is January 2nd. It's freezing, and now he's cranking a car that he's not even been in, and it wouldn't start. And you're timing it with what, he's having to deliver the coin. So it's part of the progression of a football game, a bowl game, and he's like,
They got two.
it's like, oh.
That little play was smooth as silk.
It was nerve-wracking.
Yeah, for about 45 seconds, I think it'll start. 50 seconds feels like an eternity.
Up next, Manny.
I had to drive out on the middle of the football field during all the players are out there for the coin toss.
That's right.
It's like
they even go, and now direct your attention to the tunnel over in the south end zone where Dale Earnhardt Jr. is delivering the coin.
Come and get a big move.
That is not what happened.
It is absolutely.
You're exaggerating.
No, I'm not.
You are.
I'm not. I'm not exaggerating. What was different about that? They didn't. What, the part where they announced your name? How long did it go? How long did it go?
They didn't have a mic over there by the motor, by the starter, going, hey.
I didn't say they had a mic on the starter.
Well, you're going,
that's what it was.
Like this is echoing out of the speakers of the whole stadium.
No, nobody said that. Nobody said that, did they? I didn't say that. I'm saying this is what the car was doing. And I'm not wrong. It was exactly that. How does a car sound when it won't start?
It was way back in the tunnel. Nobody could hear that.
But you could.
I didn't insinuate that everybody in the grandstands could hear it. I'm literally saying that they announced your name, and then when you would go flip the switch, what did it do?
It turned over and started.
Oh,
on the inside corner for a strike.
Wait, it's not what happened. It's not what happened.
1 second you're like, oh, there's anxiety and stuff, and then Mike's like, yeah, there's anxiety, and you're like, no, there wasn't.
Yeah, of course there wasn't.
No, there wasn't.
What I remember was it went smooth.
The other 3 times you did it, the first time you did it, if I would have said, hey, you remember that time when you went out there and drove a Tax Slayer car and it went flawless, you would have said, no, it didn't. I couldn't start that car. No, you don't remember right. It's just a matter of which position I took.
Damn.
He was going to.
We did it 3 times.
Yeah.
The pitcher nailed the corner.
Listen, I probably find this on YouTube.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
It wouldn't start.
Nope. All right.
It was terrifying.
I don't really remember.
Apparently, I was the one that had more of a.
I got over it, I guess.
You got.
I moved on.
That's the thing.
Listen, moving on.
This is why this is why it all makes sense. What you're saying about this Nova. Is that the problem is that when you haven't had a chance to even sit in the car before you're supposed to drive it in a moment that there's expectations, there is some anxiety. So that's why it makes sense that you would go take it over.
It'd be like saying, hey man, drink some liquor out of one of these.
Right.
Nobody's touched it
since 1975, right?
Nobody's drinking it here. You be the first.
Yeah.
I mean, it is out of a Kelly Yarborough car.
Yeah, I found it on YouTube. But the car's
Misses
already
1-0.
Oh! Then it ain't the same year.
A changeup.
Again, we did it
The
3 or 4
YouTube
years
video
in a row.
says exactly. First ever
trying to get the batter to
coin
chase.
toss for Tax Slayer Dale Jr. Bowl. Flawless.
Yeah.
So it
Like
says,
I
the
said,
name
y'all
of the
don't listen to
YouTube
me.
video.
It actually
You don't
says
listen to me.
in the description, 0 anxiety. No.
3-1.
Hey,
Hitter's pitch.
what
And
you
there's
know
the
of
first-
Dale, Matthew,
Did
let's
you
be
see the
honest.
first comment?
What you know of Dale
Stop
Jr.,
right
if the situation I just described,
Yeah.
what do you
It's a
think he
full
did?
count.
Did you see the first
You think
comment
he
in
was like,
that YouTube video?
No, he wasn't super chill.
No. You think?
No.
No.
He
It
walks
says
up.
cranked right up.
Fox
Awesome.
always seems to come
First
right
comment.
He falls behind the batter and just never gets back into the bat.
Does it
Great.
say what year that is, Lee, that
Steps
you were
into the
looking at?
box.
Hey,
No.
we got the guest is here.
Oh.
We got Chocolate Myers is
All right.
in the house, so let's get him on screen here for y'all.
Well, he's trying to get unhooked and getting congratulated here by the crew and telling them what a great job they did. Dale, a tremendous race. Well, that was something else. You know, Bill spun that 9.5 car out and caused a big mess, and then he come up there and tried to spin me out twice. I didn't take it.
It's been a fine run for the driver from Kannapolis, North Carolina. Dale Earnhardt wins the Good French 500, accepting the checkered flag from Harold Kinder, and there is celebration down at the Dale Earnhardt pit area.
Well, Dale Earnhardt takes victory here in Rockingham. His crew goes nuts. These guys have about worn out their shoe leather in the last few laps. They've been walking all over the pit road, just trying to contain themselves. Earnhardt has done it. The crew is delighted. They were a big part of his victory.
Come on, Chocolate Myers is in there. And
I'm here.
There he is. Look at
Got
him.
it.
Oh, handsome fellow. Look at this
Looking
guy.
good, too.
Yeah, 53 innings this
All right,
season.
everybody.
Batters have had moderate success
Great
against
guest
him with
today.
an average
Chocolate
of
Myers is on the show. Chocolate has
At the belt.
been a big part of
Showed excellent
RCR
command
and
of cut fastball
Dad's
right
pit
there.
crew.
Strike right on the edge of the zone.
He's done a lot of things we're going to talk about as well with RCR, but
Third out,
I've known
we
him
go to
for
the bottom
a
of the
long
inning.
time, and
After
but there's not. I don't know everything about you, so I'm excited to have you on the show today, Chocolate. Thanks for taking some time to come see us.
Yeah, man, I'm glad to be here, and I absolutely enjoy your show. I catch it a lot, and love what you're doing. And man, I just love to do stuff like this, and because so many people don't know the backstory, and I think sometimes the backstory is the most important story.
Yeah, no. So that's what we want to get into. Tell me about your family's been involved in racing for a long, long time. So tell me about that. Tell me your connection to racing from early days.
Yeah, so I was born kind of like you into a racing family. I guess the first time I went to Bowman Gray Stadium, my mom was pregnant with me, right? And so I grew up at a time that my dad was a racer, right? He raced at Bowman Gray Stadium. He raced all over the Southeast. Pretty daggone good. Raced with your granddad, raced with Ralph Earnhardt, back in those days. But raced anywhere and everywhere. And to be a part of that, to grow up as a kid, and everybody asks you, and I know they ask you the same thing, are you going to grow up and be a race car driver like your dad, right? Well, my dad finally had the opportunity of a lifetime, 1957. He sits on the front row there in Darlington and gets involved in a crash and loses his life. So that's when my dad, I was 8 years old when my dad passed away. But I still love this sport, and I would still go to Bowman Gray Stadium every Saturday night. For a while, my mom would carry me, then I'd ride the bike, and then finally I had an opportunity to drive. And then they had a division there, believe it or not, called the $99 claiming division, and you could buy a race car for $99. So that's actually my first experience in racing was a race car that cost $99.
That sounds fun, man. That's awesome.
I want to hear about that car in a minute. But so you're talking about your family's history. Your dad, Bobby, raced. Your uncle Billy raced, and you mentioned your dad losing his life in a crash at Darlington. You were 8 years old. You remember anything about that time in your life or that day?
Yeah, I do. And My grandmother lived in Winston-Salem, and kind of where we grew up as well. But I remember being there, and believe it or not, this was 1957, listening to that race on the radio as a kid, and then hearing the crash, and all of a sudden, you know, they were upset. They were in tears. And I remember saying something like, heck, Dad's been wrecked. He's been in plenty of wrecks. He's going to be okay, you know, but that day wasn't okay. And, you know, and that was one of the toughest days, right, when you go through that. But almost being so young, you don't really realize what the impact's going to be on your life. But, you know, finding out later. And you know, I've throughout my history, people have always talked to me about how I get involved in racing, and I tell them, you know, my dad was one of the early pioneers in NASCAR, and it was way late in life that my mom was still alive at the time, and my mom was getting ready to retire from her job, and I said, Mom, how long have you actually worked there? And she said, well, the day that your dad died, I promised you boys that I was going to raise you till you got out of school. And I was supposed to start to work on a Wednesday, but your graduation was that night, so I couldn't start to the Thursday. So my point is, I always gave my dad credit for the reason I'm in racing, but my mom was more than likely the reason because she raised us and by herself. And that was just one of those things that you just don't think about too much.
Yeah, I was wondering how that affects you today, you know, that early loss of your dad, and you know, I mean, you worked through it and you became something special in your own right, and surged forward and paved this awesome career for yourself. But when you look back on it now, how does it affect you?
Well, you know, I'm really proud of what my dad was able to do. I'm really proud that I look at a sport that has changed. It changed when my dad lost his life. It changed when your dad lost his life, and it's made it better. And I look and no different than you. I look at it and I go, this is what we do. This is what we love. And my dad and your dad both had choices, right? And this is what they chose to do. But for me, it was. You know, I was so young, and then I did not have that father figure, and you know exactly what I'm talking about, because we both had to, you know, the way that this business is, deal with that. For me, it was a young age. For you, when you were as young as I was then, when you were 8 years old, he was gone too. He was out racing. So we had to kind of grow up and do our own thing. You know, for me, that's even today, because I remember all those things. I took those magazines, those programs, and I went through them page after page after page, and I understood. And you know, for you, it was probably looking at video. For me, it was looking at those old programs, but just absolutely absorbing all of it and getting those names and those places and just absolutely loving it. And to be a part of it today, it's really been special.
Well, Chocolate, he still reads those programs. Don't kid yourself. This guy still eats those things up.
Well, look, I'm going to tell you, my mother saved everything that my dad did in his life. And I can open these closets here, and I can go in and I can pull those programs out from 1952 and 53 and 54. And behind me, right here behind me, those are all my dad's trophies. There's like 30 some odd trophies there behind me from all over, from some of those great places that heck, some of those places that you talk about as well.
That's pretty awesome that she did that, and you can sort of, like you say, absorb that history and learn so much about your dad. Having tangible items like that, like those trophies, and photographs, and you know, documentation of finishing orders and so forth, and all those programs, it really brings it to life. So was there ever a point, I guess, in your young life where, I guess, you know, losing your dad and him being such a prominent figure in racing, but obviously your family was involved in racing and with your uncle and so forth, and you lived in the local area to go to a local track like Bowman Gray. Was there a moment or a point maybe in your teenage career or teenage life where maybe you almost lost that connection with racing? I imagine when I think about, and I asked this question because when I did my genealogy, I understood how delicate our lives are and how easily they can kind of get derailed. And what is today could easily have not happened, you know, and you might not have stayed in racing. Was there a moment where maybe you were a star athlete in college or high school, where there was a time where you had to make a decision, a fork in the road, if you will?
Yeah, and for me it was a little bit different. And you know, I go back to what you're talking about. After my dad, then we still had my uncle Billy. It was the Myers brothers. It was Bobby and Billy. And then less than a year later, my Uncle Billy passes away driving a race car at Bowman Gray Stadium, had a massive heart attack. So that was really devastating because now we had nobody, right? But then life moves on and we go on and you know, I'm in school, probably could have been a star athlete, probably. But I decided to go to the racetrack instead of going to the practice field. And then later on in life, you know, kind of got away from it a little bit. And, you know, my buddies were all building motorcycles, and that seemed to be the craze back then. And
how old were you?
Oh, man, I was at that time just 20-something, right? And kind of got away from the sport, quit really caring and you know, started doing that, and you know, things were kind of crazy right then.
What do you mean things are crazy? Like you just were running around being a biker?
Oh yeah. You know what? It was one of those things. It was just absolute. You know, and look at that time. This is. And look, I've got some age on me, man. So I go back at a time when you wanted to build a motorcycle, you wanted to build you an old Harley, you had to go out and find those parts. You couldn't pick up the phone or get on the internet and order stuff. You had to go find them. So we were running all over the country, buying motorcycle parts and putting these old Harleys together and riding and having a good time and just not caring about anything much at all. And, you know, it was fun. I don't think I'd change a lot of things. I probably wouldn't change that. But I'm one of the fortunate ones that you know, I didn't get in any trouble.
Yeah.
Why, I do not know. Lucky more than anything else. I just, there come a time that I wanted to change my life. And that happened because of racing. And it happened because they had a race on TV. And it was not even live. It was a recorded race on TV. And I'm sitting there watching it, and I see some of the guys that I used to know.
Really?
Right? And I'm going like, man, that's what I want to do.
Yeah. So I'm just going to imagine that you were decked out in leather, sitting in some juke joint bar.
That's the picture I have.
Your bike's parked outside, and you look up on this tiny 12, 13-inch television and go, hey, I know that guy. You know what? It's kind of like Forrest Gump. Just gets up and walks out, gets on his Harley and rides back to North Carolina. Doesn't say a word to his buddies.
He's rounding second.
Do we got that right?
Yeah.
Is that exactly how it happened?
It's pretty,
He's on with a single.
that's pretty close. Actually, I wasn't at a bar. It was my grandmother's house. But yeah, that's pretty dang close. You know,
as any biker would do. They would be in their grandmother's house.
Yeah.
So did you get in any? You don't have to get in descriptive on this if you don't choose to. But did you get in any bar fights as a biker?
Did I get in any? Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Did you get thrown out of any bars?
I don't. I know. Well, yeah, there were a lot of places. It's kind of funny because now, you know, later in life, doing a lot of things different, and riding the bicycle is one of them. You know, I enjoy that. I love that. And one of the bicycle shop that I go to is up in Winston-Salem, and that used to be a bar, right?
Yeah.
And I was in the other day, and I told him, I said, dude, you don't have any ideas how many times I've been thrown out of this place.
Oh, man. Man.
Awesome.
Every cyclist goes to a cycle shop and goes, I've been thrown out of this when it was a bar, right?
Are you riding a road bike?
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
No, I'm look, and remember, see, because you young guys are going to laugh at me, but I'm an e-bike guy.
Okay.
I've been building these e-bikes, and it lets me go ride maybe as much as you do.
Yeah.
I don't know. I get to ride a lot, though.
Yeah, those things are awesome. I mean, you can still burn quite a few calories on those things if that's what you want to do. But you can go try.
That's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, they'll go 20, 40 miles on a charge.
The e-bikes just get you up the hill a little better?
Yeah. If you come up on a steep hill and you don't feel like climbing it,
sometimes you try to make the hitter chase your picks.
Well, you climb it easier.
Yeah.
An e-bike will make you 12 again. Is what it does.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Hey, Chocolate, like I'm trying to get out. I mean, like you've always been perceived, at least for our generation of watching racing and being race fans, as just a lovable, always jovial, happy guy. And I'm hearing this. Childhood and then your upbringing and everything. I mean, did you ever go through phases in which, you lost your dad at 8, you lost your uncle a year later. I can't imagine that didn't have a toll on you at some psychological level. And then, and how you might have, if that is true, how you got out of it.
Yeah, I think all of that credit would go to my mom. When I was young, I had a wonderful mother that look, guys, I don't remember ever having a bad Christmas or a bad birthday because she made that commitment in her life that she was going to look after us. I got a brother that's only 15 months younger than I am, but he passed away several years ago. But my mother is the reason that we were able to do that. And I want to go back a little bit because after my dad and my uncle died there at Bowman Gray Stadium, you remember, they used to run cup races there. They had 2 or 3 cup races there a year, and one of those races was the Myers Brothers Memorial Race. So we were always there as a family, my family, my Uncle Billy's family, and we were always there as kids to present the trophies. So I was always there, and I'm around Richard Petty and David Pearson and Junior Johnson, and all of the heroes of the sport, all of the Hall of Famers, Bill France Sr., Bill France Jr. I knew all of those guys. I look at it now and I look at that NASCAR Hall of Fame and I go, I've had a personal conversation with everybody in here. How cool is that?
Mm-hmm. That is pretty awesome. I didn't even really look at it like that. But so, I want to get into that transition of how you got out of, being some mid-20s biker into NASCAR, but I want to ask you before that. So, losing your dad so young, and your uncle, and then your brother passing away. How does that make you feel about your own mortality? I kind of think about that too. With when Dad died, it didn't bother me as much. I didn't consider my own mortality or how short life is, because it happened so quick. It was sudden. He didn't die of old age. It was a odd occurrence. And then when I watched my mom pass away from cancer, now that was an awful experience. That was a long, tough thing, and it really made me think, like, God, I ain't got much left. I ain't on here. I ain't on this earth for much longer, right? And I imagine maybe you have been thinking the same thing, about yourself, or maybe you already thought that before your brother passed away. But when those kind of things happen in your life, it really makes you take a little stock in what you've done and what you want to do. You got that going on?
Yeah, I think about it, not a lot, but I think about how fortunate that I've been. I have been healthy, but I do look at, and every day, every day you're one day closer, right?
Yeah.
And we know that we're not going to live forever. And so, for me, I try to do the right things and be a good family guy. I try to, I try to think about what life will be like without me. And I kind of joked about it before, and I've said, hey, when I die, on my headstone, you can put, he wasn't here for a long time, but he was here for a good time. I have really, look, I've been blessed, man. I've been blessed. I've been at the right place at the right time, whether it is in my entire life, right? I've made most of my own choices. I've not been forced into anything, and I've just been blessed with all the things that have come along. And they've all been at the right place at the right time. It's one of those things where you were just this close to disaster, and all of a sudden somebody throws you the lifesaver, right? Yeah. Well, that lifesaver has come to me in a lot of different ways, at a lot of different times.
I would imagine primarily through racing, though, right?
Well, it has, and I can go back. The lifesaver, one of them, when I decided I wanted to go back into racing. I wanted to be a part of racing. I wanted to make a living in racing, right? That's one of them. When my wife came along, well, that was a huge lifesaver, right? And
how so?
Because at that time, oh man, well, I love to share this story. Because, look, and you've been there and you know exactly what I'm talking about. When you're winning races and you're winning championships and you're the best in the business, you don't have to buy any drinks at the bar ever, right? You walk in, hey, come on over, let's set them up around, and we were there. We were just absolutely the best in the business. Everybody loved your dad. Everybody loved the Flying Aces, or whatever they wanted to call us at the time. It didn't really matter. And so you'd go to the racetrack all day. You'd go to the bar all night. You'd get up the next day and go to the racetrack. That night and go to the bar. And then when I would come home, right, I'd come home from the racetrack, and I was living in an apartment. I had a Harley, I had a Corvette, but I didn't have anything else. But I never went out, I never partied, didn't do anything at home. But when I go back to the racetrack, there it was again, right? So I'm in Daytona, Speed Weeks. And by the way, Speed Weeks used to be Speed Weeks. Yeah. You were there for 2 weeks. You were on the racetrack every day. You were always doing something. It was busy. But it was at a time when things had started getting pretty good, right? And Childress had got a place there at Spruce Creek, and he said, "Hey, let's have a party tonight. Let's cook out. Maybe not a party, but let's cook out. Let's invite some friends over." Okay. Well, about that time, I see these two girls walking through the garage area, and I go over and I go. And by the way, one of them had a cell phone. Well, actually, at that time, it was a bag phone. It looked like a suitcase. I said, "Hey, we're having a cookout tonight. Would you like to come?" She said, "Where's it at?" And I said, "It's over at Spruce Creek, where John Travolta lives." Right? I went, "Dude, how do you turn that down?" Right? Yeah. The Travolta's neighborhood, and she came with me. And then we had a nice afternoon there, sociable afternoon, and then asked her out again. And so we went out again, and we went to a place there in Daytona, Billy Bob's. Back in the day, that was the place, right? So we go to Billy Bob's, but I had forgot that I'll say this the easiest way. Like, I was overbooked. I might have asked somebody else to be there as well. So we're there. And the best friend I guess I had to get me through those situations was old Jack Daniels, was a good buddy of mine at that time. And so I hammered some of those jacks back and feeling pretty good. And then Karen comes over and she says, "Hey, look, if this is your lifestyle, that's fine. It's not mine, and we can just be friends. And we're going about our business." And I think I took one more sip, maybe or maybe not.
Snuck one last one out.
I set it down and I said, "This is the last one that I'll ever have." And so we've been together ever since. And once again, that was just another one of those things that changed my life and came along at the right place at the right time.
That's an awesome story, buddy. I appreciate you sharing that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
those are tough decisions to make, things you have to sacrifice. But if you want something bad enough, you'll give up anything for it. So let's go back to that decision to get back into racing. How does that start? Like you're at your grandma's house, you see racing on TV.
Yeah.
Who you call somebody? What'd you do? How do you get back in racing?
And give us an idea about what
I know you know everybody, right? You got all these relationships at this point, so it probably wasn't hard to start that conversation. But how did you get back in?
Okay, so and I appreciate it, because when I see the race on TV, I see Childress, of course, and I see Tim Brewer, a couple local guys, and I'll share some more Childress stuff with you here in a minute. But I decide this is what I want to do, but I don't really know how to go about doing it. But I do have those relationships. I get in a car the next day, and I drive up to Junior Johnson's place, right? Because it's 1983, and he's going to have two teams in 1984. He's going to have the 11 and the 12.
Yeah.
So I drive up to see Junior, and you know, you just walk in, right? You pull up, you get out, you walk. Nobody's there to go, can I help you, right? They don't have a receptionist. They don't have anything. A bunch of guys working on race cars. So I walk in the shop. Junior is in the engine shop back there working on an engine or something. And I walked up to him, and I said, I don't know whether you remember me or not. And he went, oh, you're one of Myers boys. I went, yes, sir. And he said, well, what can I do for you? And I said, man, I want to get back in racing. I know you're starting an extra team. And he said, well, let me tell you. He said, I've got everybody I need right now. He said, but you ought to go down there and talk to Childress. I think he's going to make something out of that operation he's got. I think he's going to do something with that. And go talk to Richard. And, you know, so I already had known Richard because we had raced together. I went to Daytona with Richard Childress with a Grand American car in 1969.
Yeah.
So 51 years ago, I actually went to Daytona with Richard Childress. But anyway, I go down to see Childress, and I walk in. I tell Richard, you know, hey, I'm looking for a job, and this is right after they had won their first race. Ricky Rudd won at Riverside earlier in the summer.
Yep.
And Richard told me, he said, look, I don't need anybody. I've got everybody I need. Hey, but look, I just bought a bunch of old equipment that I bought it at a sale, and I'm going to fix it up and sell it. Now, I've got it over at another building. Would you be interested in helping me with it? And I said, heck yeah, I'll do anything, right? So he had bought actually an old diesel machine shop that had burnt out or something, and they had all these machines that were practically new, but man, they had been in a fire. They were bad burned, and he wanted to fix them and sell them. So I go over and start working on them, and I start thinking, right? And I'm going like, what is the best thing you could use to get burnt grease off of something, right? And I thought about it a little bit, and I'm going like, well, wait a minute.
That's a
oven cleaner. The oven is always full of burnt grease. So I go get oven cleaner and stuff like that, and I cleaned this equipment. And I would clean the equipment during the day, and in the afternoon I'd go over to the race shop, and of course they never had enough help. So I'd go to the race shop, and what do you guys need? And whatever it was, I would help them. So I did that for about 3 months, and it was the end of the season. And your dad was coming the next year, or coming back the next year, and I had an opportunity. Richard came to me and he said, look, I need somebody to go and ride in the truck, and I need somebody to take care of the equipment and make sure everything is there. And so that's when I actually, and that's kind of a crazy story too, right? Because I actually went to work there full time in 83, but my hire date is later in 84 because for the first 6 months, the company, I don't think, had enough money to pay me, and Richard paid me out of his pocket, right? and the rest, you know, been there ever since. And, you know, I mentioned the lifelines. The other lifeline for me was when I got the opportunity to do Sirius Radio. You know, my wife talked to Daniel Norwood and said, hey, if you ever have an opportunity to need somebody, he's got some great stories, and, you know, I had an opportunity to do that. So that was another one of those things through racing that I got a lot of. And I'd already, the things had changed. I was getting a little bit older. I was off the road, right? And like, what am I going to do now? I'm not going to the race every week, and started doing series. So that was another one of those lifelines.
So how did the equipment turn out that you were cleaning?
Oh, the equipment turned out great. You know, Richard sold it, made some money, gave me a little bit of a bonus. And when I'm talking about a bonus then, you're talking about, you're not talking thousands. You're talking about maybe 100, right? That was a big deal back then. And, you know, got the equipment sold, yeah.
So that's funny because I was talking to Mike last night about this show and about you, and I said, you know, I really want to dive into how he got involved in NASCAR, got involved in racing, because when I was a kid, obviously, I mean, all this stuff for me is kind of spotty back then on my memory, but, you know, it was like in 1984 when Dad went back to RCR, there you were, right? And I had been in and around the garage a little bit, but I didn't really recall seeing, you know, you're pretty memorable, right? So I didn't recall seeing you, and I thought, because it was almost like you just popped up in 1984 and there you were, but it was like you'd been there forever. So that kind of makes sense because you had those relationships from the past. And another thing too is you're trying to describe your role. Dad was the intimidator, but before he got in, you know, that was when y'all painted the car blacks when he became the intimidator. But he was kind of just a wild man out there starting all kinds of mess in that yellow and blue car. And you guys were when we've had Richard or Shelmerdine on the show, they all would say, you know, whatever your dad started on that track, we were ready to finish. We were behind him, even if, you know, no matter what he chose to do, we were behind him. And I always, Mike said the enforcer, right? He used that word, and I feel like that probably best describes you in a yellow and blue Wrangler uniform. Do you feel, because y'all were, they called you the Junkyard Dogs, they called you the Flying Aces.
You had that poster with chocolate chain around his neck. It looked like a pro wrestler.
Were you the enforcer? I mean, now, no, I didn't know about your biker background.
Right now, I think it's probably more so.
Well, you know, I think yes and no. And here's what I mean by that. I don't think a lot of people messed with us just because they were afraid to mess with us. We didn't have to do anything, right?
Yes.
I had that reputation, probably a pretty bad reputation at the time. I think we scared some of them. You know, I have trimmed up a little bit, but the old beard used to be a lot bigger, a lot bushier.
Yep.
And you know what? I laugh about this now because I see the guys go to the racetrack and they go there, and when they leave, if they wanted to, they could wear the same clothes back the next day.
Yeah.
Dude, we had to change clothes during the day.
Oh, yeah.
We went there, we were dirty, we were greasy, these old cars were rough, right? And so I think that when people saw us then, they thought we were probably a little bit meaner than we actually were. But that being said, I'm telling you, it was like, you know, I laughed about it, thought about it last night. You know, when your dad won there at the All-Star race, the Winston back in the day, if you will, and it was the pass in the grass. Well, then after Victory Lane, he had to walk across the pit road, across the grass, across the racetrack, and up through the stands, right, to get to the press box. Richard said, go with him. Make sure nobody gets him. Make sure nobody gets him. So I remember walking across that racetrack and going up through the stands with your dad. A lot of people cheering, some people booing, but I remember getting to the press box and looking back and seeing just how far he was in the grass. You know, when you're on pit road, you don't know. It looked like he just barely ran off the racetrack. And you look back and you see those tire tracks that are way in the grass, man. So I guess that we all were that guy, right? We loved him so much, and I think he loved us, Whether he was right or wrong, he was never wrong in our eyes.
You know what? This reminds me of something. I can't remember if it was Kurt or if it was RC himself, but I wondered because we hear of all of these altercations or all of these dust-ups, whatever you want to call them, that Dale Earnhardt would find himself in all the time. And I said, surely there's one incident where even you guys thought, that's a little screwed up. I mean, like, that was a little over the line, I'm going to admit it. But emphatically, RC said, nope, he was never wrong. We all, in our eyes. Is that how you saw it too? There's nothing he could do to anybody else, or did any other situation at any time make you go, come on, bro, that was a little unnecessary?
Probably not. You know, look, we had a lot of friends out there that we raced against, but they knew how he raced. And he raced hard. You know, look, he run hard. He played. I mean, there's some of them, right, that you know that you're going to have to apologize to your friends with, right?
Yeah.
So, it's like, look, and they're mad at you. They come over, right? But I think they all respected him. It was even like the All-Star race, the one I'm talking about. You know, we were good friends, or as good as you could be with that bunch on the 9 bunch, and they were mad for a minute, right? I mean, they got over, most of them. I mean, some of them, I don't know if they ever got over it or not, but some of them were mad for a minute. But, you know, I shared this story with you because your dad and my hero, he could dish it out, but he couldn't take it. Now, I love him to death, but he could beat on you and pick on you and do things to you. But if you tried it with him, it got mad. So I'll share this quick story with you that we were in Daytona testing. And you know, this is a time him and Rusty are pretty good friends, and they're teasing back and forth, and they're doing something. So Rusty decides, for whatever reason, I don't remember whether it was coming down pit road or whatever, he decides to come up there and put a big old donut on the side of the car, right? And a test. Playing, right? Gonna have a good time. Gonna tease your dad a little bit. So they come into the garage area and they stop. Your dad gets out of the car. He walks over to the toolbox. He opens a drawer and he gets a hammer out. He walks over to Rusty's car and takes that hammer and just starts beating the hell out of the side of the car.
Really?
And like Barry and Todd and all those guys are sitting there looking, and he said, hey, you can do something to me all you want to. Don't mess this car up. These boys work too hard on this car. So, you know, it was, he was getting even with it.
Wow. I've never heard that story.
Oh, yeah. Do what?
Did you guys ever prank him? Did y'all ever mess with him?
Oh, no. Maybe you couldn't because, you know, like I said, he couldn't take it. But
he's going to come back so hard.
I look, so we're at test, and all of these things happen at a test, right? Yeah. Most of them happen at a test because it's the only time he had time to play, right? So I got to share about 3 stories with you here real quick.
Yeah, take your time.
Dale, you remember the way the old transporters used to be? The engines were all stored up at the front.
Yep, there was no lounge.
And where the lounge is at now. We didn't have a lounge. We had a motor room. And then when the race was over, the test was over, we didn't have a wheel service, so we stacked all those tires up in that room, right? We were at Talladega testing. And Dale says, hey, I'm going to run one more lap. Let's get loaded up and get out of here. So your dad goes out. He's on the racetrack running. And we go over and we start loading up all the tires back up into the front of that hauler. I'm up in there because they're going to throw them up to me and I'm going to stack them up. Bobby Hutchins is on the ground handing them up to me. Your dad pulls in and like always, he jumps out of the car and he comes walking over towards the truck. And he's 20 yards or 30 yards away from the truck, but he sees me. He takes his helmet off. And he's got it by the strap, and he's winding it up. And he's going to throw it at me. And I see him, and I'm going like, Dale, don't, because he's going to throw that helmet. And he throws that helmet underhanded by the strap as hard as he can. And right before it got to me, old Bobby raised up to hand me a tire, and it hit Bobby in the back of the head.
Oh, man.
The catch is made.
We thought that we weren't going to be able to fly him home. We thought he had a concussion.
I bet he did.
He had a knot on the back of his head so big, it was unbelievable. And your dad came over and almost laughed it off.
Of course.
It was like, oh, okay, you're going to be all right. Let's go.
Oh,
right?
my God.
Oh, yeah. And then one of the other times, we were testing at Bristol. And, we'd go do a Goodyear test back then, and I don't know how it is now, but we spent the first day trying to figure out what tire we were going to actually run. And then Goodyear would always make a fuel run on whatever your choice was. The last tire, the tire that they thought they were going to race, they'd say, okay, we're going to go out here and do a fuel run. Well, that meant we were going to be out there. We're going to be down for a while. Dale's going to go out there and run 100 and some laps. So myself and Will Lynn, we decided that we're going to cross over the track and go watch a little bit of the test for the flag stand. So your dad goes out on the track. We go up in the flag stand. He comes by the first time. He's just putting around, like idling around. And he looks up, going, what's he doing? And he comes around again, and he looks up, and he's kind of like holding his hands up like he wants something. And Will said, he wants us to throw in the flag.
That's right.
We take a shirt off, and he comes around again, and we wave the shirt like it's a flag. And he takes off and runs 100 and some laps, man. And then there was another time up there. This was special because you'll know what I'm talking about. Because your dad used to tell stories about his dad and what Ralph made him do.
Yeah.
And how he got to be as good as he was, right? And we were up there testing and like out in the middle of a run, and all of a sudden he shuts it down. He coasts around the racetrack. He comes in the pits and he went, it blew up. I went, what? It blew up. Hey, really? Yeah. Pull the Oberg off of it. Nothing. Clean as it can be. And for anybody that don't know, that's a filter that we can look inside of. And there's no metal or anything in it. He said, dude, I'm telling you, it blew up. I know what I'm talking about. And he goes over to the toolbox because he can work on these things as well. And he gets a big pry bar out, and he goes over, and he sticks that pry bar down at the front of the engine, and the front of the crank had broken off. But he caught it. He caught it so quick, it didn't do any damage. It was still there. And went, dude, how do you do this? And he said, my daddy used to make me race with the thin sole shoes so I could feel these cars, so I'd know what I'm talking about, so I'd get that feeling. But, man, it was pretty amazing that he could catch some like that.
Yeah.
That is really incredible. That is an awesome story.
Race with thin sole shoes.
Oh, yeah.
We love hearing about how Ralph's influence. I mean, because, Dale Jr. never got to know him, and we did this Lost Speedway show, and there were a couple tracks where Ralph, we get to hear people talk about Ralph. And man, I don't think I've heard one yet that didn't just give me chills, because he's an extraordinary person that was lost too soon. So that's a great story.
Well, let me share this with you, because here in this room somewhere behind me there's a fish carburetor, and if you're not an old school NASCAR guy, you have no idea what I'm talking about. But a fish carburetor was the thing. And I found an article the other day, or somewhere around here, I've got it, and it said, and I think it was 1956, it says Billy Myers wins the 1956 National Sportsman Championship running a fish carburetor, finishing, I forgot how many 100 points ahead of second place, Ralph Earnhardt, who was also running a fish carburetor. So, I look back at those days and see what those guys did, and I love those stories. Karen and I have got 2 old race cars that we take to Daytona every year. We do the beach parade. I'm often towing them down the road, and I've got one that has a tow bar, so we flat tow it, and thinking what it was like for those guys. My dad, my uncle, Ralph Earnhardt, all those guys that went up and down the East Coast. And by the way, the interstates were not there. They were going through every small town to get there. And those pioneers of this sport, man, they did a heck of a job.
Hey, guys, let's take a quick break right here from talking to a true original like Chocolate Myers to tell you about a favorite original of ours.
That's right. We're talking about Valvoline. Chicago, 1895. 6 motorized wagons. The winner, Massachusetts.
The
Frank
Red Sox have won 2 straight
Duryea.
games. The Boston Red Sox win it by 4.
He had Valvoline in the motor of that wagon back in 1895. Joe Amato, Pennsylvania native, a drag racing legend, 52 victories under his belt in the NHRA. First driver to exceed the 260 miles an hour barrier. And then the 280 mile an hour barrier. In top fuel competition. He had Valvoline in that thing. Mark Martin, 1993, became the 6th driver in NASCAR's modern era to win 4 consecutive races. Watkins Glen, Michigan, Bristol, and Darlington. Mark Martin had Valvoline in that thing.
And on that thing.
Hey, when I won in Martinsville in 2014. Drove on up there into the front, took the checker flag for my first grandfather clock. I had Valvoline in that thing. Throughout motorsports history, Valvoline has been at the top. They are about the originals because they are the original motor oil.
Good job, Dale.
Thank
now
you.
let's get 3 cheers.
3 cheers.
Now let's get back to 3 originals. Yeah, you, Mike Davis, and Chocolate Myers.
I got to ask you something, Chocolate. Okay,
Yeah.
if we get back to some of these Dale Earnhardt moments, the other thing that I remember being captivated by was, and I think you're sort of alluding to it, is that there were a lot of times when the team would have to almost go play the political side with people to sort of find resolution in which, and it's usually because Dale was in the hunt for a championship. And so when we had Ricky Rudd on, that Dale and Ricky had that, well-publicized, dispute, we'll call it. And there was another occasion where the crew chief or Richard or whoever would have to go to them like, listen, I know you owe him now. You owe him, but we're in the championship. And so we're going to ask that, don't get him back later if you have to, but just, whatever. Is that how you remember it too? Because what we're thinking is, these guys are scrappy, man. They're going to fight. It sounded like you guys were better at the politics and you guys could honestly be diplomatic about situations. Is that right?
I don't remember any of the diplomacy, to be honest with you. Here's what I remember. If you got him back, you were in serious trouble. Right? Look, he was the intimidator.
Yeah.
Because he didn't care. You hear these guys talking about, hey, we're going to Martinsville. That'll be a lot of people getting paid back. If you wronged him and the next race was at Daytona, you're getting paid back. He didn't care. It didn't matter. It didn't matter where it was at. Look, Dale Earnhardt, Dale did not do as much as a lot of people thought he did. He didn't have to. After he'd done it a few times, he would just get behind. You watch the race today, and you're trying to figure out whether they actually touched him or the air spun him, right? Did he really? We just watched it like a couple of weeks ago, and you guys in the booth up there talking about it. Well, I think just the air is what turned him. Well, those guys looking in the mirror is what turned them when Earnhardt was driving, because they saw him coming, and they, how much you got to focus? Well, they started focusing on what was behind them, not what was in front of them. And he wrecked a lot of people and never touched them and didn't need the air to do it, right? If you follow what I'm talking about.
Yeah, for sure.
Of those disputes, if I were to say, okay, Jeff Bodine, Ricky Rudd, and Rusty, which of those sticks out to you? And do you have any moments that really of impressions of any of those altercations? Because you would have probably been part of all.
I'll give them to you in order.
Let's hear it.
It would have been Bodine, and then Rudd, and then Rusty, okay? That Bodine deal was a real deal.
Oh, yeah.
Those guys did not like each other on or off the racetrack. On or off the racetrack, right? I think the Ricky Rudd deal was really, I got to give them both a little bit of credit for it. Both of those guys were pretty hard-headed on the racetrack. They weren't going to take anything, and I'm not saying anything wrong with that. That's just the way they are. You got some guys out there that will and some that won't. Neither one of those guys would take anything. So I guess, and I don't know this for a fact, Ricky Rudd is a friend. I like the guy, but your dad took his job.
Yeah, he was.
Right? So automatically, he's probably not liking your dad too good. And then when they go out there and race, racing your dad, he's if he can catch you, he's going to move you if he needs to. And they had that relationship. But Bodine, it was one of those things with Bodine, even later on, your dad, he was going like, man, old Bodine's going through such a struggle. I started to feel a little bit sorry for him, right? But he still raced him like he did not know him. Yeah.
Whatever compassion he had.
And by the way, I'll share this one to you because if you go, and I'm sorry, I can't remember what year it was, but it was the year that Ricky and your dad got into it up at North Wilkesboro.
I think it was 89, 90?
89.
Yeah,
89.
and there's a big, almost a fight.
Oh, yeah.
Almost a fight out on pit road. I'm right in the middle of it. It's like you see one Goodrich shirt and you see about 15 of those Quaker State shirts, right?
Yeah, Larry Mack, too.
Oh, yeah. So the next week, I get called into the NASCAR trailer. One of the only times that I had to go to the NASCAR trailer. So I go in there, and Dick Beatty, which I love Dick Beatty. He was he ran the garage for many years, and he was a great guy, ex-racer, ex-biker, right? Motorcycle racer. Tough. There was nobody in the garage area any tougher than Dick Beatty. But old Beatty calls me in the garage area, and he said, man, he said, I want to know what you were doing. He said, France called me from out of the state, said, we've worked so hard to make this sport better, and here you are in the middle of pit road out there getting in a fight. And I said, that's not what happened. He said, will you tell me what happened? I said, well, it was getting ready to be a fight, and I was out there trying to break it up. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, all of them pushing and shoving, and it takes one guy to give another guy the finger, and then here we go. And I said, I'm out there to make sure we don't have a fight. And he said, well, I'm going to tell you something. He said, I appreciate that. I said, by the way, if the same thing happened to you, you would have been in a fight. And he went, oh, no, I wouldn't either. No, I wouldn't. I said, Beatty, you almost got in a fight with the record driver at Martinsville last week. And he said, best thing you can do is get out of this trailer right now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was so interesting when we had Ricky Rudd on the show earlier, and he told us he was so honest about how pissed off he was about Dad taking his job. He's like, man, I had went to Richards, and we had built something really great. And Dad, Ricky Rudd said, I'd go over to your dad's house and on the lake, and Dale would ask me all these questions about, man, y'all got it going pretty good over there. What are y'all doing? And he's sitting there pouring his guts out to Dad about all the great things. And then Dad turned around and rooted him out, shoehorned him out of the deal, and stepped in there and won all them championships. And he said that really ruined their relationship. They were really good friends, because I remember Ricky would come over to the house all the time, skiing and carrying on the lake, and then it just abruptly quit. And then next thing I know, they run over each other everywhere they go.
Yeah, well, I'll say this. For me, and I go back to that lifeline again, I was working for Childress about 3 weeks, and we were able to win a race with Ricky there at Martinsville, the first time that I got to go to Victory Lane. But that relationship with Ricky was strained, like you said. But I think even when your dad came to work or came back to RCR, it's one of the things that we talk about a lot on the channel, right, on Sirius. And we talk about the greatest drivers ever. Of course, you've got Richard Petty, you've got Jimmy Johnson, and you got your dad. And you can choose whatever you want to choose, whoever you think they are. But I'll tell them this. Jimmy Johnson came along and stepped into a championship car and a championship team. We were still building that race team, or Richard was still building that race team when your dad got there. If I told you some of the things that they did or we didn't have, it was unbelievable. And to be able to go out there and make a championship team out of what we had was crazy. And I don't think it would have happened with anybody other than your dad. because they were good for each other.
Yeah.
And I'm a friend. I like Ricky Rudd, but I don't think that success would have been there with Ricky. You know, it had to be what it was, and that was your dad. And look, your dad and Richard had one thing in common, right? They both grew up pretty tough, and neither one of those guys finished school. And that was the one thing that they had in common, that they talk about it every once in a while. Well, their regrets in life not being able to finish school. So they had that in common, and they were going to be successful in whatever it took, and they were able to do that.
So your race day job was gassing the car for many, many years.
Yeah.
Dangerous job, carrying 11 gallons of gas on your shoulder. Y'all, have you ever had any – I can't remember you ever being in any real serious issues or having any close calls, but maybe you had some that I don't know about.
No, not really. We had a couple of things that could have been disasters, but the caution came out where we, for whatever reason, one time I'm stepping over the wall at Daytona and somebody throws another tire under my feet and I fall down but still get some gas in it. But as far as getting hurt, not really, but I will share this because this is another one that we did that a lot of people don't know about. NASCAR decided at Talladega years ago we could run a smaller fuel cell and it would make the racing better because we're going to have to make more pit stops.
Yep.
So the geniuses there that are crew chiefs decide, well, wait a minute. We'll ask NASCAR, being the fuel cell's bigger, if we can run a bigger gas can, that way we can fill it up with one stop. So they decide to make like a 15-gallon gas can for me, right? And I said, guys, let me explain something to you. A weightlifter, the greatest weightlifter in the world, may be able to pick up 500 pounds, but he may not be able to pick up 501 pounds. Right? Every pound, and they make these gas cans to go to Talladega with. They must have been 135, 40 pounds. They'd take two people to get them up on your shoulder. And I'm going like, guys, you're trying to kill me here.
That is hysterical. Hey, by the way, I meant to ask you this early on. When did you actually start gassing it? I mean, because was it that 84
No, so it's funny that when I went to work there, it was just like, this week clean the windshield.
Right.
Next week hold a stop sign, and then it finally got, hey, you're one of the biggest guys out here. Hold that second can. So our buddy Barney was the fuel man back then, and I was the second guy, and I would hand him the can, and then we did that for a couple of years, and then when we made some big changes there, we moved into the new building, and then it was my job to be the fuel guy. And I did it the whole time. But Dale Jr., it was something kind of crazy. Somebody gave you one of the stop signs here a while back, and I saw it, and that is the real deal. And I remember when it got gone. But here's what happened. They made those things at Piedmont Airlines back in the day. That's what it was made out of, some netting material and some stuff like that. But I do remember that.
Yeah, so 2017 or 18, I think. We were at Darlington for the throwback race. Before I got there, a guy reached out to me and said,